Hello everyone, for this week's mini talk I am at Manly Corso. How very exciting. This is one of the most walked on streets in the whole of Australia, particularly when the tourists are here. They arrive on the ferry and hundreds, thousands of people walk from Manly Wharf all the way down to the beach, which you can see behind me. And I thought I'd come here today for today's mini talk because it's all about a crowd pressing in and a woman reaching out to touch Jesus. We continue our series on why we exist. And if I was to pick one of the stories of the last few weeks we've looked at as the most important, I would say that this is it. This is the one. This one is really important. When we think about why we exist, this story in Matthew chapter 9 is really important. I'm going to read it to us now. So we're reading from Matthew chapter 9, verses 18 onwards. While he was still saying these things, suddenly, a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died. But come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus got up and followed him and went with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If only I could touch the hem of his cloak, then maybe I'll be made whole, maybe I'll be made well." Jesus turned, seeing her, and said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in, took her by the hand, and the girl got up and she was made well. The report of this spread all around the region. Jesus heals two people. He brings someone back to life. And when we think about why we exist, I believe the story in the middle there about the woman reaching out to touch Jesus is really important. Matthew uses a mechanism or a literary kind of construct called an inclusio. An inclusio is basically like a sandwich, or maybe in Australia like a burger. I can see Hungry Jack's over there, where you have this kind of story sandwiched by two other bits of stories. And we see that today, don't we? Like the top bit of bread is the start of this story where the man says, "Jesus, you need to come and heal my daughter. You need to bring my daughter back to life. She's died." Then the woman that reaches out and touches Jesus' cloak, who's been hemorrhaging, who's healed, is in the middle. That's kind of like the meat of the burger. And then the story returns again to the girl that needs to be brought back to life, and Jesus does that. An inclusio is a mechanism to say that a story is really important. What Jesus is saying, what Matthew, the writer, is saying by putting this story in this way and laying it out in this way, is that what comes in the middle, the meat in the burger, is really, really important. Now, I'm vegetarian, so the veggie patty in the burger is really, really important. This moment in the middle, this section in the middle is so important. And when we think about why we exist, this is really key. So I want to talk about three groups of people, and then I'm going to let you get on with whatever you're doing. The first group of people would have been in the crowd. In that moment where Jesus reaches out to touch her cloak, there would have been people everywhere pressing in on Jesus. It would have been really difficult, as we read in one of the other gospel accounts of this story, for Jesus to actually work out who it was that had touched him. Our church exists for people in the crowd. These people in the crowd were maybe street sweepers or shop owners, just like people here, who had heard something about Jesus. They knew that he was good, that he turned people's lives around, that he could change people's lives. But they didn't really know what he was about. So they were kind of looking on from the distance, curious about what was going on. Our church exists for those people. We've been doing live streams, mini talks, different things for a little while now. And what we're starting to see is people come to our church or engage with our church because they've seen online. People inviting their friends, first seeing what we do online and then coming in. So if you want to come to church and this is the first time you said it online, you're so welcome. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to get a coffee or invite you to one of our house churches or our gathering, hopefully in January. Our church exists for the crowd, the people on the fringes looking in. The second group of people in this passage are the disciples. I find that the disciples are interesting in this space because this man comes to Jesus and says, "You've got to go and do this work. You've got to go and do this healing work. You've got to bring this child back to life." Now, bringing children back to life is a good thing to do. This is kind of high on the priority list, looking after children. And it is at HUO as well. Not just looking after them, but allowing them to flourish and lead us. And so the disciples say, "Come on, Jesus, we've got to go. Ignore the crowd. Ignore this woman. We've got to go and bring this girl back to life." And our church exists for those people. If you've been coming to our church for a while, or you go to any church for a while, we're going in a direction, we're going somewhere, we're heading on a journey, and we've got to keep going that way. But we also have to allow ourselves to be distracted. Bringing the girl back to life, bringing this young child back to life is really important. The work that we're doing is important as we play our part in the restoration of all things, as we glimpse this beauty. That stuff's really important. But we also have to create space to be distracted. So the second group of people, the disciples, we exist for those people. And the final group of people or person in this story, in the inclusio, in the middle, in that really important bit that Matthew wants us to get, he wants us to get that this is really important, is the woman who's been hemorrhaging for many years. Imagine what that would have been like. She would have been outcast by society in that culture. At that time, she would have been shunned. People wouldn't have related to her in the same way. And yet, in this moment, that touch of the Saviour, reaching out and touching Jesus, she's made well. And Jesus says to her, your faith has healed you. Can you imagine what it was like for her? Shunned in the crowd, having to like push her way through the crowd as all these people were interested in Jesus and wanting to know more about him. She reaches out and just touches his cloak. And she is made well again. She is set free again. She is made whole. It's a beautiful story. And Jesus says to her, your faith has healed you. Our church exists for these people, the most broken in society, the people that are struggling the most. I'm so humbled and excited by all the work that we've done around NAIDOC Week and justice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, for people suffering domestic abuse, for refugees, for our work with the environment. We exist for the most vulnerable, to restore injustice, to play our part in the restoration of all things. We exist for all of those groups of people, the crowd on the outside, the disciples that might be listening, and the most broken. If you want to join us, if you want to come on this really exciting adventure with us at church, come along on Sunday, get involved. If you want to find out about the life, grace and freedom that is found in this guy Jesus, who can heal, and I believe he can do that. I believe he was a real person. I also believe he was divine. Then come along and find out more. We would love to meet you. Send us an email, comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're one of the disciples, let's do this. Let's go on this adventure as we think about why we exist for all those people. Amen.